think, what's next for the Nashville Symphony? What's the next challenge? The next hurdle that we need to leap over?
Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Krenz, and I'm here with Leonard Slatkin, who has just been announced as the new music advisor, the returning music advisor for the Nashville Symphony. So it's a real pleasure talking with you this morning.
Very nice to be with you too, Daniel.
So one of my favorite things is in your book of conducting business. One of your first question that you had at the very end of the book was, "What does a conductor actually do?" So I'm curious. We've seen a lot of conductors here in Nashville, but what does a music advisor actually do? What is the difference there between a music director and a music advisor?
20 years ago, I held this same position with the Nashville Symphony, and of course, the question came up again. So there are really three kinds of people who for an orchestra. One of them is a music director whose job is to shape and mold the orchestra over entire seasons. They work on the programming, they conduct the majority of the concerts, they select the majority of the programs and the artists. And of course, they deal with other matters as well, board meetings, auditions, various social functions. They become an active part of the community. The second group of conductors are guest conductors, those who just come in and usually do 1 week, which for conductors, maybe 5 days. You come in, you do your rehearsals, you do your concerts, and you leave. You don't have any other obligations other than being the best musician you can possibly be. Maybe you will transform the orchestra over the course of the week a little bit, but then the next week they will go back to a whole other basic set of principles that they've been used to. The music advisor, in this particular case, kind of serves an in-between function. So just as with 20 years ago, the Nashville Symphony is looking for a new music director, as Giancarlo Guerrero is now finished his, I think, 16 years
Mhm.
with the orchestra. So they're in a period where they are searching for who's going to be the next leader, who's going to take them to the next level. What will that level be? It means also that the audiences in the orchestra will be seeing many different conductors, many different, styles of conducting, many different concepts of how music goes. So my job is to kind of try to put all this together. How do I take these disparate conductors and make a whole out of the season, which is going to be primarily dominated by guests? Now, I'll be doing in each season of the 2 years that I'll be doing is 4 weeks each year with the orchestra. And during those weeks, I will serve to a certain degree in the music director capacity, in the sense of I'll be monitoring and being one of the people who helps to hire the new musicians who'll be coming in. I'll shape the season with the programs, but I will not really be selecting the conductors anybody will see, because that's a decision that has to be made between the public and the orchestra and the board.
Mhm.
But a list will be compiled. We will put them together. I'll make suggestions as to the kind of repertoire that they should do, but it all has to fit in the scheme of a whole season. What makes sense over the course of the 14 weeks or so of classical music, and even the ones that cross over into the pop genre or the film genres. So my role is to advise on who should be there and advise on what the season should look like for everyone.
hmm And like you said, it's kind of a transitionary period for the Nashville Symphony, and especially it was just announced recently that the CEO will be Alan Valentine will be stepping down after this upcoming year. Is there
Yes, but
any way that you approach this music advisor position differently than you did 19 years ago, coming
yeah,
back to the same orchestra?
yeah, but last time, of course, Alan was still not the new kid on the block, but he'd been there long enough. He'd seen everything through. The Skirmahorn Center was just opening. You have to remember that
hmm
one of the reasons I came in the first place was because the music director, Kenneth Schermerhorn, had suddenly passed away, and they needed somebody to open the hall that would bear his name, much less take over the functions that he was going to be doing. They needed that right away for that to happen. So the keys there were that Alan was solidly in place, and there was a strong artistic administrative staff as well. But it was a tough year because now they were going to go to a new home, big opening, uh, recordings were going to take place. It was really going to be a lot to do. This time around, the hall has already been there for 20 years, so we don't have to worry about that. But as with before, we have to think about, okay, who's going to be the next director? I couldn't take it on 20 years ago as I was still in Washington and getting ready to go to Detroit. And in this case, I wouldn't take it on simply because I'll be too old to do it.
I
I
don't know
don't
about
want to do it. The music director days for me are over. I can't take 10 more years to shape an ensemble. I don't want to do that. But I can help them go in the new direction. So in some ways it's similar, and in some ways it's different because we have to decide what the leadership role now entails. What is being a music director like in Nashville in this second quarter of the 21st century? It's certainly not the same as when I was helping them get Giancarlo. Now there are more things to consider. We've mentioned the idea of the role that a music director might take in not only pops concerts, but film music and education. It's quite different now than it was 20 years ago. So I have to kind of gauge that. Maybe the idea now is to plot a real strategic plan for what the orchestra is and should be, and find the right conductor that fits into that plan.
Mhm.
In the past, the idea was you picked one person who would go about setting an agenda that they wanted. Now I think we're in a different time. I think we need to really concentrate on what communities need and find the person that fits those needs much more coherently than we did in the past.
Yeah. I have a question about so you first conducted the Nashville Symphony back in 2006, and I
Oh,
believe,
I first conducted them years ago, long
oh,
time
really?
ago.
Oh,
It's
okay. I know you
well,
opened the
for
hall
the
in
last
2000.
century.
Okay. Well, so you've had a long relationship with many
Yeah,
orchestras.
yeah.
Um, and you last came back to the Nashville Symphony in February and March of this year,
Mhm.
with a wonderful program of Rossini,
Yeah.
Adana, and Tchaikovsky. What is it like when you have a multi-decade relationship with an orchestra, coming back and seeing how they're similar and how they're different? And when you're coming back and conducting the program, how do you incorporate all of those?
Well, the first thing is that you immediately connect with the people who you've known the longest. That would be in any case. So there are several in the orchestra that go back to the period of 20 years ago, and a few who even remember me from, I think, the 1980s, maybe.
Mhm.
A lot of the newer members will come up and introduce themselves and then tell me where they played with me before.
Mhm,
It could have
mhm.
been in a school, it could have been with another orchestra, it could have been in a festival. So I would say that in some way, I kind of know 60 to 70% of the membership of the orchestra. As a guest, what I usually try to do is to pick one good solid piece from the standard repertoire that many in the orchestra already know, but I will bring whatever I have to bring to that work, and they'll bring their personality. And we had a new cello concerto by Mark Adamo that was really wonderful and a pleasure to introduce to everybody. And as you mentioned, the Rossini Overture. So it was a fairly standard overture concerto symphony program, but I thought we gave a lot of energy to it, and it did help me see how Giancarlo has shaped the orchestra over all these years. He did a marvelous job. He really did. He kept the standards high, made them even more flexible than they were when I was around 20 years ago. And those are things that I can use to help as we go forward. As far as what we're looking for, or what I'm looking for, we're still in the very early stages, but we only have a few months to really get the 26-27 season in place. Now, next year is all set, and
Mhm.
some of the conductors for next year are certainly candidates to be music director. So we'll monitor that as it goes along. But we'll be looking for, well, let's see, if I do 4 weeks and Giancarlo does three, I think, so that's 7 weeks there. So that's already half of the classical subscription. So possibly seven other conductors, maybe not that many, might be down to five. And they may be people that the orchestra wants to see again that they saw a few years ago. And some of them will be uh, people they don't know. I have a couple suggestions that I'll make, but they don't have to take them. I'll go by what everybody's looking for. And the programming will probably mean that for the guests anyway, the orchestra and the public will want to see them do one good, solid work from what we call the standard repertoire. You want to, it's the only way you can really judge a conductor for long term. There'll probably be a contemporary or at least American work that will serve as the concerto in a given program. Could be something more unusual. There will be conductors who will be looked at possibly, and I hope it's actually true that we do it, for their communication skills. These days, we cannot just get up there and wave our arms. It's really how do we verbally communicate to our audiences? How do we use the social media? What ideas do the other conductors have? So it won't be just about the conducting. There'll be an interview process as well. I probably won't be involved directly in that part, but we'll try to make sure that the people who come have these good communication skills, regardless of where in the world they happen to come from.
I'm fascinated by your communication skills because one of the things that I've admired about you personally is that you've written numerous books, you have a very active blog on your website, you've hosted several radio programs.
Yep.
And that is a side of a conductor that a lot of people don't see. Usually, if I'm on a conductor's website and they have a blog, it's usually just PR announcements from their manager instead of actually
Yep.
in-depth um, the thoughts of the conductor. So how do you see that kind of it's not explicitly part of the conducting job, but how do you see that as in relationship with that work on the public?
I actually think for many cities and many communities, it should be explicitly part of it. Nashville's one of those. You have a very good audience base there. People love their orchestra and they love coming to it, but they like something extra. Now, maybe most people don't know it, but before each concert, there's usually a chat session that takes place, usually with the conductor. I forget what the name of the particular room is that they do it in. It's about 150 people, maybe
Mhm.
200, I don't know. So that's part of the communication element. I also think that it's not a bad idea for the conductors to turn around to the audience and talk to them about what they're about to hear, especially if it's a piece that's new. And how do you listen to it? What are you listening for? If it's a piece that where the composer's not there, it's up to the conductor to do that. Often the composer comes out and tells you something about it. I think education now is critical because around this country we have lost so much ground over the last 45, 50 years in terms of how we teach our young people, not just about music, but about the arts in general. To me, that actually means we need to broaden our definition of what the arts are. To me, it's anybody who creates something that was not there before is making art. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter what the genre is. And because of that, understanding how it's done, how do we make music? How do we write it? Uh, how do we perform it? How do we take these dots and circles that are and dashes that are on a page? How do we convert that to something that's meaningful? What do should audiences take away from it other than something that might be moving for their souls? Is there a deeper message that we can do? I really think the conductor today, for most places, needs to do that and be part of the community. Go out there in the community, actively speaking on behalf of not just the orchestra, but the arts community in general. And the arts are coming under big fire right now. It's not going to put it in a political way, but it just people are saying, okay, why should we spend money for a symphony orchestra? What value does it have in the 21st century? We can go and listen to recordings. Why do we have to come to concerts? Well, these are all things where a music director who will be the leading figure for the arts community in most cities in the United States, that's where this person goes out there and uses their communication skills to really address the issues of the arts in today's society.
I think that's wonderful, and I agree as a frequent audience member. One of the few people that we have a relationship with in the concert experience is the conductor and the performers
Right.
on stage. And so hearing from them, whether it's at a pre-concert lecture or during the concert itself, is a wonderful, engaging thing for an audience member. So I'm glad to hear that that is something you value as well, because I've.
But it's not just the concerts, though. I think it's a person who really needs to be out there coming up with new ideas, things that they can present. Go to a high school, talk to a class,
Mhm.
go to a hospital, speak to people in intensive care, bring some music to them, do all whatever you can to just give the idea of the arts to so many varied communities. That's, I think, what a music director has to do now.
Mhm. I have just two last questions, but
Sure.
one of them I'm interested in your work as a composer, because that's not also something frequently that a lot of conductors do. So have you always been a composer, and has your approach to composition changed the way you would approach a score studying Beethoven or something you might know very intimately?
I actually thought that I would be a composer before I was a conductor. I left high school and went to study at Indiana University as a composition student, and then various things didn't work, and I went back home to LA for, I think after 3 months at Indiana, that was enough of that. I didn't like it. Uh, and I left music for a year and a half. I was an English major and thought I would be an English teacher, actually. And then gradually conducting came into play. But all along, all through my whole life as a conductor, I've been fascinated with the idea of creativity as opposed to what I do, which is primarily recreative. I take what's already there and try to have it make sense, first to myself and then to others, the orchestra, the audience. But along the way, I think one of the most valuable things anybody who's in the position of a recreative artist can do is to try to understand what it takes to make something out of nothing.
Hmm.
So the fruits of that early on were that I was writing in my earliest days as an assistant conductor here in St. Louis. I wrote pieces for the orchestra, I wrote pieces for string quartet. I wrote a lot. One of them actually wound up being, I'm not going to say popular, but it gets played by others, and it's a work for narrator and orchestra based on Edgar Allan Poe. It's almost a half hour long. A lot of people have done it. It's called The Raven. What a surprise. And I recorded it with Alec Baldwin, and others do it, and I might bring it to Nashville because it's actually pretty good. But it was the first piece I wrote for orchestra, and so I wrote pretty constantly for about 10 years, maybe a little more. And then things just got too busy as a conductor, and I didn't have time. But over the last 10 years, I've been writing again. And the writing goes into two categories. One of them is transcribing works. And that means taking music by others that usually is either for keyboard or chorus or chamber, and making versions for orchestra. I recently premiered a set of Scarlatti keyboard sonatas that I wrote for wind ensemble.
Hmm.
And that was a lot of fun to do. I enjoyed that. It's, most people are not going to hear Scarlatti sonatas on the harpsichord. So I thought, why not give them to orchestra winds? Maybe they'll pop up on an orchestra concert. But original works come into play too. So I have a little concerto for six woodwinds and strings. I have a piece that was dedicated to the memory of my parents called Kina, and a piece I'm taking around a lot this next season, which is called Schubertiad, which I wrote last season for the Hiroshima Symphony Orchestra. They wanted a work that had something to do with an anniversary of Schubert that's coming up. So I wrote this, and after the premiere, I went, this is actually not bad. I need to do this piece. But I have a little problem sometimes. I don't want to be seen as just self-promoting, but I like to keep the royalty stream flowing. So usually an opening piece is going to be a work by my wife, Cindy McTee,
Mm.
or it's also going to be a work by my son, Daniel Slatkin. So I try to keep the Slatkin family and try to make some of these pieces very personal. It's nothing I did a lot for other composers in my life. Yeah, there are very few American composers that I didn't do, or that I either didn't commission or played quite a lot. And I thought, that's time to keep it in the home for a little while.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
But the composition part really is reaching inside to try
Mm.
to understand. I feel I can understand other composers better if I go through the process myself of writing.
Mhm. That's wonderful. Last question, is there anything in particular that you're looking forward to over these next few years with the Nashville Symphony? In the new but same returning role?
I love Nashville. I really do. And it's not dissimilar to the job that I've been doing for the last year and will wrap up pretty soon. And that's as the consultant to the Las Vegas Philharmonic. Now, a lot of people don't know there's an orchestra in Las Vegas, but there's a good orchestra. They do very well. It's not quite the size or season that Nashville has, but the cities have a lot of similarities in that much of what the is encountered is a population that comes to visit, relies a lot on the tourists. And because of that, there's a huge diversity in the people who populate the city. Vegas, like Nashville, is attracting a lot of interest in the corporate sector. Las Vegas will have all four major sports teams in a year and a half. They've got Formula One, they've got soccer, they have new businesses coming in. So they're growing just as Nashville's been attracting so many corporations. And that remains where so many of the audience for an orchestra comes from. That doesn't mean what an orchestra does is exclusive. It's not. An orchestra does many things for different segments of the community, and sometimes they come together. So I'm looking forward to getting to meet some of the new movers and shakers in the Nashville community, get them excited about what the orchestra is doing. Uh, I think it's a season where I expect to have a good time. As you pointed out, we have 20 years of the history of the hall. We have Alan Valentine. We'll have to do some sort of big send-off for him. I hope we will. Um, and we'll try to figure out a new path. So for me, that's exciting. I'm not a person who does maintenance very well. I'm all about going forward, seeing what's next for the Nashville Symphony. What's the next challenge, the next hurdle that we need to leap over, and maybe my coming back will help. I hope it will. Uh, I'm really looking forward to reconnecting with the orchestra on a regular basis for several weeks a season. That's always fun to do. You come back and they tell you, oh, I hated that conductor last week. We're glad you're back. Or that conductor last week is really good. We hope you're just as good this week.
Mhm.
You never know.
Yeah. Well, I know we are tremendously excited to have you back, and we're really looking forward to the next few years. So I really appreciate your time and talking about the position and getting to know you a little bit better. So thank you so much.
You too. Thanks. Lovely interview. I enjoyed that very much. You take care of
Thank
yourself.
you. You as well.